No, I don't know why they took out the ampersand when they localized it to the US either. So I was really looking forward to Dungeon & Magic. I got my boxed copy after I started doing Famidaily, so I hadn't had a chance to dig into it, but it seemed like something that'd be really up my alley. And then I started playing it and discovered that it had the single most absurdly difficult, virtually impossible start of any RPG so far. Yeah, it's easier to gain your first level in the wizardry games than it is to do so here. And that wound up undermining the whole experience for me. Maybe I can get into it later? I don't know though, this is quite a hump to get over. The packaging for Dungeon & Magic introduces us to Natsume's famous motto. It's Technostasy, since 1987. Actually, as far as I can tell, this game is the only time that they use that motto. And I have no idea what Technostasy means. The story in Dungeon & Magic is pretty basic. There was a big evil, it got defeated, the big evil came back, so now you have to collect all the stuff that defeated the big evil the first time. Dungeon & Magic is a Dungeon Master clone. It was one of the more influential computer games of the mid-80s, taking the wizardry-style dungeon viewpoint and making it a bit more action-based, with monsters that roamed the dungeon halls rather than random encounters, and real-time combat that occurred whether you were doing anything or not. And when I say Dungeon & Magic is a clone of Dungeon Master, it is almost dead-on, feature for feature. In fact, the only significant difference is that Dungeon & Magic has outdoor areas and a town. You start out in town, reading a notice that the king is looking for help, and you're a level 0 nobody with no equipment. Visiting the king gives you 100 gold and a sword. 100 gold is just enough to let you buy one, and only one, piece of armor. I wound up going with boots because the chest plate had the exact same defense boost, but cost more. And then you get to try to earn up some levels. Outside the town you'll find these snakes. They give you 1 experience point when you defeat them. At level 0, because you'd rarely connect with anything, it'll take you 7 or 8 attacks to defeat a snake. The snakes can kill you in 2 hits, and they rarely miss. There's a ton of snakes wandering around outside the city, and your viewpoint isn't well drawn. You can see the 3 squares in front of you, of course, and then the 3 squares behind them, but not a wider view as things get more distant, and no further than that. Enemies move and attack on about a 3-second heartbeat. So there is kind of a rhythm that you can work around, rushing in to attack and then backing away. I didn't get a feeling for it at all, though. And so what happened to me over and over again is I went outside, and then I just got chewed through instantaneously. Over and over and over again. Eventually I got lucky and managed to kill an entire pack of snakes. So I popped back into town to rest, heal, and save. There's a problem with using the inn, though. Every few weeks, the enemies get stronger. Similarly for you, after you defeat a few enemies, you get weaker. You can recover out in the field if you camp, but that requires that you purchase food. On top of all of those other problems, enemies don't really drop any money, or at least the snakes don't. Sometimes they'll leave treasure chests behind, and you can open those up and find maybe 2 or 3 gold pieces in them. So you'd have to go at it for a long time before you earn enough to buy additional armor. So needless to say, I made 0 progress here. Dungeon & Magic's interface can be a bit confusing. You press A to activate whatever you have selected, while pressing and holding B works the menus. You have what are essentially 5 tabs along the menu. The sword tab has your weapons and armor that you've picked up. Being on that tab and pressing A fights whatever's in front of you. The next tab over are your consumables, your potions and the like. The next tab is Magic, and this is a bit of a special one. The spell system in Dungeon & Magic is a bit flexible. You pick a rune for the type of spell you're going to cast, and then you select an intensity. And different combinations of runes will have different effects. Casting a spell costs you your hit points, though. The key is for interactions. You have this tab highlighted when you want to open a chest in front of you or interact with a door. And finally, the tent shows you your current equipment load and lets you camp. Dungeon & Magic is technically impressive, which is something you'd expect from a Natsume game. The 3D dungeons with monsters running around in them is tough to do on the Famicom. And there's a lot of big graphics, all of the weapons and armor you equip show up on your character, and the spell system gives players an access to a huge variety of abilities. The gameplay, however, is not so well developed. It doesn't help that they throw you into the deep end with their combat system. And the escalating enemy power means that players have to be constantly developing or fall behind and have their game wind up in a death spiral. I look at Dungeon and Magic and go, this could have been a great game. Instead, I'm wondering if it's even worth giving it another try. I'm not sure, based on what I saw, that it'll get any better after I clear that starting hurdle.